Hi, and welcome back to Hill and Ponton's YouTube channel. You're tuned in for our weekly live. Today, I'm attorney Rachel Cheek, and I'm here with Carrie Baker. How are you doing, Carrie?
Good, Rachel. How are you?
Great.
You and I the first of 2026?
I think we are. I think we get that that dubious honor. Um, we were talking before, and you mentioned that you had a clarification on an earlier comment.
Yes. So somebody just got an email from somebody else in the firm, and they had a question about something that I had said, I guess, in a previous show about A&A. Um, and I'll just read this so people can understand what I'm talking about. It says, the vet mentioned that during a video live stream, you mentioned that a vet doesn't have to be 100% to apply and get aid in attendance. However, the vet spoke to a VSO and they were told multiple times that's incorrect. And so they wanted a clarification on that. All right. So I am not at all surprised that a VSO told you that. Uh, that's exactly what I would expect to hear from a lot of VSOs. And that's the same thing I would expect to hear from a number of VA employees. Um, and that's because, generally speaking, a person is normally 100% before they apply for aid and attendance or before they get aid and attendance. Um, and there is, and I think I mentioned this in the last question, there is a clause in VA's manual that says generally a single 100% is required for aid and attendance. Uh, that is incorrect. Okay. Now, the manual says that. That's why a lot of VA employees think it has to be that way. Not only rated 100%, but a single rating of 100%. And so, me explain again where that comes from. They think that those was put in the manual by somebody in central office because they likened getting aid and attendance to getting housebound status, where you have a single 100% and a separate 60%. That gets you a housebound rating, or SMC-S, which is one step above 100%. Aid and attendance is two steps above 100%. So they reason that if you need a single 100% to get a housebound rating, surely you need a single 100% to get an A&A SMC at the A&A level. But that is incorrect. That is a shallow, narrow way to think about it. Because if you're getting a housebound rating, it's not based on a need of any kind. If you're getting a single 100% rating and a separate 60% rating, it's just a mathematical issue. If you have this, you get that, whether you need it or not. All right, that's how you get to the SMC-S rate of having a single 100% and a separate 60%. You just automatically go to SMC-S if that's the case. Aid and attendance is based on a need, okay? And there is no requirement in the statute on aid and attendance. The statute is the law that's passed by Congress, and there's no requirement in the regulation written by the secretary that either one of those that you need a 100% single or otherwise to get aid and attendance. And the statute and the regulation take priority in the legal world over VA's manual. But VA's manual is written by VA's raters, bosses, so to speak, and they think they have to follow it. They think that's the law. VA likes to take the pyramid of the law and turn it upside down and pretend that their little local instruction rules the day, and the Constitution sits at the bottom of the stack. That's just not how it works. So for example, if somebody had a severe back problem, with severe radiculopathy down both legs to the point where they couldn't bend over to put their shoes on. They couldn't get dressed. They needed help on the toilet or in the shower or in the bathtub. They could still be qualified for aid and attendance, even though they're not rated 100%. A back disability does not have a rating of 100%. But you could certainly need aid and attendance if your back is that severe. That may be the exceptional case, but there's plenty of cases out there that are that severe. Or if you're rated for Parkinson's disease, you don't have a single 100%, but you have a combined 100%, or even if you didn't, but the Parkinson's disease, your tremors and everything were so bad that you needed help with from somebody else for the daily needs of living. That's the key. Do you need assistance of somebody else for the daily needs of living, which is bathing, eating, getting dressed, wants of nature, like going to the bathroom. If you need assistance with those things due to a service-connected condition, then the regulation of the statute does not require that you have 100% rating in order to get the ANA. I don't care if 1,000 VSOs say that and 1,000 raters say that. We get decisions all the time from the Board of Veterans Appeals that grant entitlement to aid and attendance in those situations. Now,
Carrie.
Yes, Rachel wants to jump in here, so go ahead.
No, I have a great example of that. Carrie's absolutely right. The regional office is going to hinge on that manual. I had a case where the regional office granted aid and attendance for a veteran. He didn't have 100% combined, but they granted aid and attendance. He needed it. We appealed for an earlier effective date. The regional office says, oh, hold on. The vet doesn't have 100% single rating. So that was wrong of us to grant aid and attendance. We're going to, they did. So we had to go to the board. The board turned that right around, and they specifically noted just what Carrie said. Although there's a provision in the manual, there's nothing in the statutes or legislation, anything like that requires any type of rating. It's based on need. So that would be my advice, is to go to the board when you get that.
Yeah, and now most of these that we get granted are at the board. So that's something you definitely should be aware of. In fact, this is how silly it gets. We will see ratings where ANA is denied, right? There will be a favorable finding in that rating decision that the veteran requires aid and attendance. Now, here's why it's silly. Favorable findings are binding on VA. So in one rating, they make a favorable finding that you need aid and attendance based on a service-connected disability. That's binding on VA. In that same decision, deny ANA because you don't have 100%. If you have that scenario, you take that immediately to the board. You argue 3.104 binding nature of favorable findings, and the board almost always grants it because that favorable finding is binding on the board as well. I'll die on that hill. And I'm
right there with you.
Yeah, and I've had conversations with VA employees at central office since I used to work there, and just like, what are you doing? Why are you putting that in, a manual? Look at the law; it doesn't require it, and it's like they have not removed it, and the board's not going to make them remove it. The board's just going to keep overturning their decisions. So. There you go.
Agreed. We could, both you and I, Carrie, I think we could spend 3 hours on SMC. I love it. I learned from Carrie. Thank you. Grace Smith said, good explanation of aid and attendance from us. So I'm glad it helped.
I like me some SMC.
Yes, it's fascinating, and VA does not understand it. But we can go ahead and get into our questions this week. Let's see, I know we've got a several parter. All right, and this is from Tiny GN4YY. Glad to see y'all. Well, thank you. I recently had my second CMP for my I never say this right. I'm just going to say lumbar spine. I received very favorable examinal results, at least as likely as not, to include radiculopathy for one leg and bilateral knees. I'm about to turn 69 next week. Happy almost birthday. And I read that as you get older, conditions get worse, definitely for orthopedics. I also filed for IU, and I wanted to know if I should be concerned that the examiner did not mention bilateral leg radiculopathy and that she also didn't mention I walk with a cane on my lumbar DBQ, but the examiner did mention radiculopathy. Okay, I know there's not a part four, and we're missing a part four. Our wonderful tech guy Benji told me that before, so I'm not sure what we're missing here. A radiculopathy injury to my lumbar spine. So the examiner did note that. And I later developed scoliosis. Lastly, how much weight does a second CMP really have on a claim? This is my second one for my lumbar. First one was done about 8 or 9 years ago. I had a hearing, and the judge asked me if I felt that the first CMP was fair. I said it wasn't, and I received this new favorable one. Does the new one cancel out the first CMP? Whew, I'm going to take a breath there. And short answer is yes, but I know Carrie is going to give you a thorough answer if you have any comments on that. Generally, if you mention that you have a problem with the CMP and it was done inaccurately, VA finds enough reason to give you a new one, and the new one is favorable. They're usually going to go with the favorable one, no?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, it sounds like this was remanded, maybe because the board found the first one inadequate. If that's the case, and I'm kind of reading between the lines there, then the second one's going to carry more weight because the board's already found the older one to be inadequate. And we know that VA today, they don't like to read very thoroughly. So they usually go to the nearest CMP exam and apply all the weight to that one, even if they shouldn't. In this case, it sounds like they should, so that might help you. But it sounds to me like you kind of got everything going for you there. Just because they don't mention bilateral radiculopathy, I'd be curious to know what they filled out on the examination for radiculopathy, because if they filled out stuff for both extremities, then the VA rater should interpret that to be bilateral radiculopathy. If they just left that part blank, yeah, then you might have an issue with it. You can always write a letter to VA before they make a decision on it and explain that, you told the examiner you have bilateral radiculopathy. You just want to make sure that's considered. And, if you can explain how severe it is and all that, there's always a chance that could get you another exam. Or they could just take that and compare it to the exam and see if that discrepancy is there. You never know how that's going to go, but at least if you get something in the record now before the decision's made and you need to go back to the board, you can go in the direct review lane because you already got the evidence in there. Remember, the direct review lane, you can't submit new evidence. So if it's there when VA makes the next decision, then you don't have to worry about it. I hope I covered some of that.
No, absolutely. I would also add to that statement noting the radiculopathy or any differences, go ahead and note that you walked with a cane. That won't really matter for your back rating, but when the VA is looking at your knees, use of a cane will show altered gait. That could be helpful. Sounds like the exams are favorable anyway, but add whatever details are missing while you're at it. All right, what's our next question?
All right, could I ask the video god there if they can you have a way to increase the size of the picture we're seeing, because it looks a little smaller than normal, and I can wear my glasses, but I'm still kind of far away from the screen. So I'm having trouble reading.
I don't mind reading. I'm leaning in too. If you want to take the answers,
I can do it either way you want. If you want to, if you can see it fine, we can go back and forth on the answers, and that's fine with me.
Until it becomes large. I don't know. Tech is not our forte. Thank goodness for Benji. All right, I'll take. Mine are getting there. All right. This is from, I think this is a random generated username. I hope it doesn't mean much to you because I'm not going to say it all. But they ask, once the BVA grants an appeal that requires no further development, so a grant versus a remand, how long are you all seeing the DROCs implement the BVA decision, including retroactive back pay? Second part, if the BVA grants, oh, here we go, Carrie, SMC. So let's answer the first question. Actually, these are two separate. First, it really depends. I'd say generally we can see a turnaround in 2 weeks to a month, or I've had ones that sit there and sit there and sit there. 8 months later, we're messaging to the VA, hey, can you please give this veteran what they were granted? What about you, Carrie? What's your
No,
timeline?
the same. For the most part, these days, they're pretty quick about getting those implemented. I've seen them under a week. I'd say on average, a couple of weeks. There's some outliers, like you said there. But also on the retroactive stuff, look, we see a lot of mistakes when they implement these board decisions. So don't take it as the word of God that they did it correctly. If you know how much back pay you should be getting or how far the effective date should go back to, and they don't do that, be prepared to appeal that, because you can still appeal that decision that implements the board's grant because a lot of times the board won't set the effective date. And if they do, then it takes all the guesswork out of it. But if they don't set the effective date, the regional office has to do that. They make a lot of mistakes on that. So just something to be aware of.
Absolutely. So let's see the second part question. All right. If the BVA grants SMC R1, are you still entitled to receive SMC-K for loss of use of creative organ, or will you just be paid at the R1 rate based on dependency status? It's the latter, correct, Gary?
I believe it's the latter once you reach that level of SMC.
Yes. You get paid for SMC-K all the way up to N.
In and a half. You can get like in and a half plus K.
That'll take you to R though, right?
That'll take you to O, and
You're right.
and which pretty much means you're going to be at R1. If you're at O and you need A&A, you go to R1. I've never seen a case where you're at O and you didn't need A&A. So I think the in and a half is the last rung that you can get the K.
All right, what's our next one? Leander Savoie, 1450 says, hello, I just got 100% permanent in total. Congrats. And I got back pay 4 weeks ago. I just got a letter for another CMP about the same issue that I got granted 100% for. Should I be worried about what to expect from this? I think there was there a second no? I think he already got paid. Okay, yeah. I don't know that you should necessarily be worried. Sometimes what happens when you get a grant with retroactive pay, in that rating decision, they'll set you a rating and then say, and they'll go back to your effective date. And then they'll say, further, a future exam will be scheduled to determine your current disability. So sometimes if an appeal has been sitting for a while, say at the board, the VA is going to give you the rating based on whatever the evidence of record says, but they might not have a CMP, except from 10 years ago. At that point, they need to get it updated to make sure that you're getting the correct rating. Carrie, any addition on that?
That could be a number of things. It really depends on the issue and what's going on in the case. If they definitely granted 100% P&T, and they did that for the life of the appeal, I would be curious as to why you're getting another CMP for the same issue. But there could be a number of things you're not factoring in there. Is there an issue that they didn't rate completely for the whole period of time at the maximum rate that they didn't have an answer for, or is it really P&T? Because sometimes you can be 100% not P&T. So not much more I could add to that without knowing the specifics of the case. But they can't take away anything they've given you as far as back pay goes. So.
Correct. All right. Remy 86 says, hello, excuse me. Will it support my claim for an attendance, the fact that VA had bathroom grab bars installed in my home for my service-connected bilateral shin splints and right lower extremity peripheral neuropathy? Also, do you think sending pictures of the modifications to the bathrooms would help my claim? And that second question I can answer, yeah. Document, show any changes or additions that you have needed to make to your home. As far as aid in attendance, I think that could help to support that, you need some kind of aid to get in and out of the bathroom safely. But remember that aid in attendance is the need for another person's assistance. Carrie, what are your thoughts on this? I'm thinking this.
I agree 100% what you just said. It could certainly help. I don't think that by itself is going to get you in attendance. And exactly what Rachel said, it's the need for another person helping you. So somebody else has to, and they can write lay statements and stuff like that on how they have to help you. The grab bars would be supportive evidence. It's just not going to be, I don't think, enough by itself.
Yeah, so you could, illustrate the other ways that you may need aid in attendance. Maybe, you've got these grab bars, but when you shower, say, you need somebody to supervise. Or maybe the bathroom's really close to where you usually are staying. You can get in and out of there okay, but you're not able to get to the kitchen and stand up and cook your own meals. Things like that. Make sure you're given the whole picture.
Like if you need the grab bars to get up and down in the bathroom, can you get up and down from a chair? Without on your own power, or do you need somebody to help you up? That type of thing. It's really, really important, I think.
Our next question is from another step 25. They say, I was denied GERD under the new criteria. The rater asked the examiner to determine if GERD could be secondary to my service-connected IBS. The registered nurse examiner said no. Is this just her opinion, or could it be connected? Thank you. Sorry, this is figuring out or and there. I think anything is just anyone's opinion. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I wouldn't rule that out entirely. I've seen gastrointestinal conditions, affect from one end to the other. What do you think, Carrie? Probably a nexus might be needed here.
Yeah, that's just their opinion. That's why they get asked those things. Yeah, one could certainly affect the other, but keep in mind that GERD is not going to be rated separately from IBS. They're going to rate those under the same code because they both affect the GI condition. So another question, let's just say they dig their heels in and they won't grant service connection for the GERD. But then the next question would be, are there residuals of the GERD that are not contemplated in the IBS rating? And would they increase the overall GI rating? Because if so, then the next question is, can they differentiate the symptoms from the GERD from the IBS? Is there a hard line there, or is it a bit ambiguous? Most doctors, I think, would probably say it might be ambiguous, that they can't really tell the difference from the GERD to the IBS. If that's the case, then they have to rate the overall disability as if all of it were service connected. I think the case is Mitlider on that. And so that can be really helpful. Now, sometimes you might have a doctor and go, oh, the IBS does this and the GERD does that. I think it really depends on the severity. IBS is generally going to be in the lower part of the bowels and GERD is going to be the upper, but I've seen IBS affect almost the whole GI system. So, and there could be cases where it could be hard to tell the difference. Yeah, but if you want, if you can get your own doctor to make an opinion, even better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Ooh, SMC again. All right. Craig Northacker, 4070, says, with respect to SMC-T, the VA did not automatically review the entitlement to SMC-T when with 100% TBI. I'm going to guess, so you got a rating decision that granted 100% TBI. Okay. I applied for SMC-T, and the reviewer proposed cutting it and aid in attendance. The VBA told me they have been seeing this lately. What have you seen? Okay, so I think I'm getting that right. You were granted 100% for TBI. You either appealed or applied then for SMC-T, which the VA should have automatically reviewed if there's been a showing that you need aid in attendance. That would be my number one question, I think, is do you already have aid in attendance? It seems like you might, because he notes there the reviewer proposed to cut the TBI and ANA. So it sounds like you already have it, and VA should automatically have considered it. It doesn't really surprise me that the regional office would have messed that up. As we were talking earlier, they tend to get things wrong, especially with regards to SMC. Carrie, what's your take on this?
Well, if we're interpreting that question right, you already had 100% TBI with ANA, and I'm going, because that's what I'm interpreting when you say I applied and reviewer proposed cutting it and ANA. So it sounds to me like they're cutting the ANA, that they're proposing to reduce the ANA. I don't know if that means they're also cutting the 100% or not. One, right on that alone, I'd probably request a hearing if they're going to try to take your ANA away from you. If the examiner made it indicate you didn't need the ANA, and I don't know why else they would try to reduce the ANA, then at that point, I don't think they're going to be looking at SMC-T. If they think they're looking at a situation where they have to reduce the rating because ANA is no longer needed, well, then they're not going to look at T at that point. Because if you can't get regular ANA, or if they don't think you need regular ANA, then they're not going to consider SMC-T. Because I try to tell everybody, if you can't get to the regular ANA level, you're not going to get to the SMC-T level. So right now, it sounds like you have a fight on your hand to keep what you've got. If I'm interpreting that right, and if that's the case, I wouldn't worry about the SMC-T right now. I'd worry about the reduction.
Yeah, and as Carrie mentioned, request a hearing, contest it, let them know that your condition hasn't changed if there is a proposal going on. And then once that issue gets decided, I was mentioning that case earlier where we had applied for earlier effective date for aid in attendance. What that turned into was a fight over whether the veteran was entitled to aid in attendance in the first place. So when VA does something like that and they make that proposal, you got to handle that proposal now, first and foremost. And then once they do make a decision, say continuing the aid in attendance, at that point, maybe I would probably look at taking that to the board as far as should you have a higher level of SMC, namely SMC-T.
Yeah, and that's where the cautious me has to come in and go, all right, you fight that and you keep your ANA. Okay. ANA is not a bad benefit. You got to really ask yourself in an honest way, do you need that SMC-T? Especially if you just barely kept the ANA that you have. You don't want to get in that fight again. That can be way more stressful. Obviously that SMT is a nice benefit if you can get it. Most of the time, it's not there. So
That's a
it's a whole,
great point, Carrie. You said it'll be way more stressful. And you got to think, I'm coming at this from a lawyer perspective. We fight the VA all the time. So I'm like, yeah, you could go for it. That is a great point. If you are representing yourself, you don't want to do stress, absolutely. But you want someone to fight.
yeah.
You know we're good. So I wish you luck with that. I know the regional office gives a big old headache for SMC. Okay, our next one's from Randy B, 9741. Part one of many. It's actually four. I have the question, so I know there's four. I filed a claim for sleep apnea after being diagnosed secondary to my service-connected back and radiculopathy. The claim was denied for no connection to my back. I got a private medical opinion and the disability benefits questionnaire showing secondary service connection for my back with intermediary of weight gain. That supplemental appeal, which you filed the medical opinion with, was denied due to TARA, toxic exposure. That sounds familiar. I then submitted a higher level review pointing out they didn't consider my new and relevant evidence. That higher level review found a duty to assist error. I just received my decision letter denying again due to it not being connected to my back, but due to my obesity. Should I submit a higher level review or go straight to the board? Okay, so to summarize, we've got a claim filed for secondary service connection for sleep apnea, secondary service connection for back. File that, the VA says, nope, it's not service connected. It's not due to TARA. They love to just bring that up, say, I'm not asking for TARA, I'm asking for secondary service connection. And the VA says, nope, it's due to your weight, not your back, despite you already having submitted a medical opinion showing, yeah, it is, and your weight is due to your back. The question is, higher level review or board? Take it to the board would be my thoughts. Carrie?
I'm with you 100%. Stop fighting at the local level. You could end up fighting that for the next 5 years. You know, these people do not like granting sleep apnea. They will if the board tells them to, and they will in other circumstances sometimes. But if you're relying on a VA medical opinion, and I have seen those guys twist themselves into so many pretzels to justify a negative opinion. I've seen where they have already said it's due to weight gain, and you come back similar to what you're saying here with evidence showing the weight gain is due to the service-connected disability. The VA examiner then comes back and says, no, it's not due to weight gain. It's due to something else. They keep running from the nexus, you know, as you shoot them down. They just come up with something else. They operate in lockstep with each other when it comes to medical opinions for sleep apnea. If you've got your own favorable evidence, I'd stop fooling around. I'd go straight to the board with it.
Yeah,
And,
direct review.
Yeah, they're not taking as long. They're within a year here lately on direct reviews. So yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say I've got a tip actually, semi-related for the board, and you're probably doing this too, Carrie. But what we found is, say you just like Randy B, you've got your medical opinion, you have the nexus, you've got the diagnosis, you got everything. You want to submit it to the board to get a good decision. Because you don't need to add any new evidence, you've already got that opinion, you can file directly to the board. There's basically a rule, or I don't know, rule, regulation, guidance that whenever you get a decision from the regional office and you appeal that to the board, when you get that decision, you have a full calendar year to appeal. You can appeal it wherever you want. But if you appeal it to the board, they're gonna not process that appeal until either that calendar year is up for you to submit an appeal, because it's actually it's a nice thing. It's in case you change your mind and you realize later, like, oh, I actually need to submit new evidence, or I have new evidence to submit. Crap, I'm already in the direct review lane. What am I going to do? If you're still within the appeal period for that decision, you can technically switch lanes. And then you have to keep track. You have to keep track with the days of all the submissions. It's complicated, but you can switch lanes. But in effect, if you know you're not going to switch lanes, you already have the medical opinion or everything that supports. When you submit your appeal to the board, I would also submit that waiver of time to switch lanes. Just say, I understand. I have, a year after this decision, I could switch lanes. I don't want to. I believe this is that Williams waiver that Carol likes to talk about. I know we've got a link to it below, but just a reminder and a refresher. If you are appealing to the board, you've got everything you need. You know you're not going to need to change lanes or add evidence. Go ahead and make sure the board knows that, because then they're not going to hold your case for a whole, that whole calendar year. They'll go ahead and put in the docket. They're not going to decide it right away, but you're not going to have to be your finished appeal is not going to have to be sitting there for 9, 6, 11 months.
Yeah, very good point.
My soapbox.
Yeah, we use those all the time.
All right. So this one, I'm not sure that I know the answer to, or not sure there really is an answer. This is more of VA healthcare, but I'll toss it out just in case you know anything about this, Carrie. Another step 25 notes they've been using community care for an eye condition, and if the VA does not have medical staff to treat my condition and others, what does that mean for veterans? Can I count on long-term care from the VA? I, again, don't know too much about the VA healthcare system. I know community care is intended so that if there's a long wait for a particular VA specialty provider, you can get treatment paid for the VA, but in the community through a private provider. I wish I could answer. I wish I knew more. If I could say, yes, you can count on it or not.
Yeah, I know a little bit about it, but I tell you that the folks, a lot of folks are at the VA Medical Center that are probably going to know a whole lot more about this than we do. But yeah, if they don't have the staff to treat a certain type of problem, or if your wait is too long for the limited staff they have, or if you live a certain distance away from the medical center, they can contract out with community care, which means either you or them, or a combination of both, can find a private doctor in your area that's close to you that treats that. And VA will contract with them. They will treat you. They don't bill you. They bill VA. And you still get treated under the umbrella of VA. In other words, they cover the cost, but you just get the treatment at a private facility. How does that play into long-term care? That I don't know. I don't know that they use community care for long-term care, but I don't know that they don't. I haven't seen that question before. It doesn't take away long-term care. I mean, if you're eligible for long-term VA care, they have to give it to you, but they may not. If they don't use community care for that, they might have to give it to you wherever they have facilities at, which means you can end up traveling a little bit to get there. But I'm not exactly sure how the community care aspect plays into long-term care. It's a very good question. Now that you asked that, I'd kind of like to know, can you use community care for long-term care? I don't know the answer to that. So, but now I want to.
Right in if you find out. All right, Tiny GN4YY again. I thought of another question. Should I potentially receive TDIU since my examiner mentioned it in the DBQ? And given my age is 69 and that my claim is 10 years old now, would I qualify for the 10-year rule, which would entitle me for P&T? And should I consider SMC claims for my back? All right, we've got a couple different things going on here. Number one, VA should consider IU, but you should apply for it. If you haven't already submitted a VA Form 8940, you need to do that. If it's due to your back, note that. Note specifically what conditions cause your need for individual unemployability. If you've already submitted the 8940, then VA should consider it. But if you haven't officially filed for IU, go ahead and do it, especially that it's related to your back. And this is a claim that's older. This claim has been going on for a long time. You want that IU to be able to attach to the earliest effective date. Carrie, anything on that before we go to the 10-year rule?
I don't think so. The fact that they mention it in the DBQ could do what we call reasonably raise the issue of TDIU. But Rachel's right; they're not going to decide it without the form. If they are doing their job correctly, I'm not going to say they will. If they see that they could possibly grant it, or it could possibly be a legitimate issue, they're supposed to invite that claim. In other words, by sending you a letter saying, hey, you might be eligible for TDIU, you should fill out this form and apply for it. It doesn't mean they will, because they got to take a little extra action to do that. But I would certainly argue in a case like that exam raises it, but it's not going to be done automatically, like Rachel said at that point. So
then our next part of the question would be, given my age is 69, which I'll say, first of all, the age doesn't, nothing but a number as far as VA is concerned. Yeah. So don't worry about age. That doesn't factor into anything that VA looks at here. So your claim is 10 years old now. Would I qualify for the 10-year rule, which would entitle me for P&T? So there's a couple different things going on here. 10-year rule and P&T, those are not necessarily together. When I hear 10-year rule, I'm thinking of the DIC issue. Carrie, that's what I think of.
Well, there's another 10-year rule for service connection. It's not a P&T rule. If you've had something service connected for 10 years or more, they can't come back and sever service connection. That does not mean they can't reduce it. I think that's where you were getting at. They can't reduce it after 20 years. So if you had 100% or 10% or anything for 20 years or more, no matter if the condition magically goes away, they cannot come back and reduce it. But the 10-year is only for service connection. They could reduce it down to 0 if it got better, if it got much better, but they still have to leave the service connection in place. But and there's a 10-year rule for DIC as well. I think that's what he's referring to there.
Yes, and P&T meaning permanent and total. Generally, if you get IU, that's going to be found to be permanent and total. Permanent and total, I believe, is based on the severity, not necessarily, the years.
Right.
So, and for your third question, should I consider SMC claims for my back? Yeah, absolutely. If it causes you to need either aid and attendance of another person, if due to your radiculopathy, you're not able to use your feet to balance and propel via loss of use, if they cause you to need SMC, absolutely. And go ahead and file those claims now. As we've discussed, the regional office probably isn't going to make the right decision, but go ahead and get them filed so that they can at least be working on them up to the point that they actually make the right decision. Any further advice on that?
No, not on that. You're absolutely right, in my opinion.
Yes. So get if you haven't already, and you've got a doctor who's willing, get the VA Form 2680 filled out. That is the disability benefits questionnaire for aid and attendance, and it needs to obviously be filled out with regard to your back and your radiculopathy. All right. Moving on to JD Men 4. Your BVA case was sent to a veterans law judge. Months later, I was informed that the case was paused due to a Privacy Act request. There wasn't one submitted by me or my representative. Per the VSO, nothing in system. Just received email. Let's just see the closed eyes and shaking head. Just received email that the case is still on Privacy Act hold. The case is simple. Earlier effective date due to poached intent to file, but this has been with the veterans law judge for 3.5 months. How do I verify if there's a pause on your file and how to remove that pause so that they can actually decide the claim? Well, first I'll say 3.5 months is nothing to wait at the board. So that's not so surprising. They will probably take a while unless your case is advanced on the docket, you're over 75, you have a Purple Heart, you're experiencing severe health issues or severe financial issues. Those would be reasons to expedite. Otherwise, 3.5 months is pretty standard. Also, as for the VSO not knowing, I'm not sure that they always know whether or not that the board system depends. The board has a different system than the regional office does. They've got two different management systems, and what's in the board system does not almost never shows up in the regional office system. So I wouldn't be surprised that's what the VSO said. That doesn't necessarily mean something's not pending. As for getting in contact, verifying if there's a pause, you need to write to the board. Carrie, any tips on this or anything I'm missing here?
Well, under the AMA system, so those systems you're talking about, VBMS is what the regional office uses, case flow is what the board uses. Under the AMA, in case flow, you can tell when the case goes to the judge versus just being at the board. And then when it goes to their attorney, and then when the judge is about to sign it, there's a way to tell that in there. If it goes to the judge and has been there for 3.5 months after, say, it's been sitting there for 8 months, that's not uncommon. It just means it's in the judge's chambers. They may have plenty of cases in the judge's chambers. Sometimes they sit in the judge's chambers for a couple of weeks. So I've seen them there 4, 5, 6 months. So that's, like Rachel said, that's not uncommon. You can also tell, if you're looking in case flow, if they've got it on hold. It may not always tell you why. I've seen some, it just says on hold. You don't know why. The board's told us that that could be because it's got a complicated issue with it, and they're waiting for somebody that deals with certain types of complicated issues. I don't know if that's true or not. The board's supposed to be able to do complicated issues, regardless of who has it. But yeah, I've seen the Privacy Act holes. So a little story. I have a case that's about 12 years old. It's been to the board. It's now at the board for the 5th time on remand. It's a legacy case. It should have been decided. It's been there for 14 months. This past go up to the board. The first few times only took 2 or 3 months. Each time it came back on remand because it keeps the same docket number. This time, here we are 14 months later, no decision. I don't know what they're doing with legacy cases, but that's a different story. We're trying to get the board to make a decision, trying to figure out what's going on. I emailed the front office, which really pisses the board off. Don't do it. They come back and found where the vet had requested a copy of his records over 10 years ago. And said, "Oh, we noticed there's a Privacy Act request," and stopped the train and sent the vet a copy of the file. We had already downloaded it. I mean, back then you couldn't even download it. Obviously, the Privacy Act request was no longer valid, but they made it valid, and here's a Privacy Act request that took 10 years to comply with. The board stops everything. So while you may not have a Privacy Act a request for the file in there, if they find an old one that wasn't complied with, that very well may be what is holding it up. Now, it's not going to hold it up for very long. But yeah, I have seen them regurgitate an old Privacy Act request that means nothing to the current appeal. And I don't know why they do that. Somebody's getting a work credit out of it, probably. It made no sense when I've seen it. It probably makes no sense to you on this. I don't know, other than emailing the customer service email and asking them to get rid of the pause. I don't know if they'll do that, but that's all we can do is email the customer service.
I would.
Yeah.
I would also wonder if you could send in writing a letter to the board and waive the Privacy Act request if there's one pending.
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
It's worth a shot, even though as you know, if you hadn't submitted one recently, like Carrie said, they could be looking at an old one that you filed before you had your VSO. So I think that's worth a shot too.
Yeah.
Waiving it in writing. I don't think an email would I don't know if they'd accept an email for that. They probably would, and you should do an email just to really paper the file, as we say. Make sure so you can note that you've been trying to get this changed.
Yeah, I've been told plenty of times by the customer service email, they're only there to give a status. They will not answer any other questions, and their status inquiries are always the same. So
Good luck.
I have no love for their customer service quality, let's just say.
Customer is always wrong when it comes to VA.
Yeah.
All right. I think we've got Carrie for one more question. He's going to have to hop off a little bit early.
Yeah, I'm glad you said something. I forgot.
Yeah. Do you need to go now, or can we handle?
We can do one or two more.
All right. Here's the Veterans Aid. Good afternoon and Happy New Year. Same to you. A VA primary care provider completed an aid and attendance exam due to mental health memory issues, finding that required someone to manage medication and prepare meals. VA denied it because of course they did. Wouldn't medical management and food prep, needing assistance with medical management and food prep due to burning food, leaving stove on, etc., fall under the ability to protect oneself from the hazards or dangers incidental to his or her daily environment? In other words, the requirement for aid and attendance. What's the proper recourse for fighting a denial if the examiner completes the 2680 that says I need aid and attendance, but the rater apparently disagrees? So in other words, the examiner found that or whoever did the DBQ did find that you needed assistance with medical management and preparing meals due to your mental health issues. So I take a look at that rating decision, because what could have happened is, just like Carrie was mentioning, we were talking at the top of the hour, they may have found that you need aid and attendance, or they may have found that, you don't need it, or you do need it, but you're not 100%. It depends on what they said. I'm going to hand this over to you, Carrie. I'm sorry. I know we only have a few minutes with you.
Well, I agree with you. But, for years, I've seen them deny ANA because of medication management. I wish I could tell you some secret argument there. You would think that if you need help with medication, that should qualify. I don't really think it does, say if that's the only thing going on. I can't tell you why. I haven't seen VA granting it based on that. Maybe they think you could use, reminders and apps and this and that, where you don't need another person for that. But I would say that alone is it's persuasive evidence, just one piece of a larger puzzle. So keep it there. Remember, food preparation, kind of the same thing here. When they're talking about the activities of daily living, it's the ability to feed oneself. not the inability to prepare food. I know it seems like if you can't prepare food, how can you eat the food? Again, just going off what they're, because they will sometimes, they're really digging their heels in, they will use the regs against you, and they will come out and say the inability to prepare food is not the same as the inability to feed yourself. So that's where they're going to have you. Now, being a danger to oneself, that's a different story. Okay. I look at ANA as two separate ways to get there. The inability to take care of the daily needs of the activities of daily living, like feeding yourself, bathing yourself, dressing yourself, or the second and separate part, the ability to keep one free from harm. Okay, which is leaving, a stove on or here. But here's the thing: I wouldn't rely just on that. Okay, because it's too subjective. You're talking about VA giving you an extra $1,000 a month over the 100% rate. They're going to scrutinize it. What else can you throw in there that's keeping yourself free from harm? You get lost. If you're going somewhere, could you not make it out of the house in case of a fire on your own? You have to throw everything in there that's going to show that you're a danger to yourself if left alone. Leaving the stove on is one thing, but I would not let it be the only thing. But if you can show that, then you don't necessarily have to show the inability to feed yourself or to bathe yourself. Those are two separate criteria. And either one can get you to ANA. But one is just a little more subjective. You might need to paper the file with lay statements from people that assist you, that type of thing is what I would focus on. Does that make sense, Rachel?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Do we part now, Carrie? I'll stay on the line a little bit longer.
Yeah, I better part. I got about 3 minutes before I got to jump on my call. Yeah, we do these in between our workday, and we sometimes have to run and go on to something else. So I think
we're not just YouTube stars. We've got lives.
Yeah, we got to get back to our day job. So
well, thank you, Carrie. It's always a pleasure.
Yes, thank you. I hope we can do it again. I know it's been a while. I enjoy doing these with you. So hopefully we can talk to them and schedule another one. All right.
Absolutely. We'll do an SMC special sometime.
Yep. I love it. All right. I'm hopping off. Right. I'll see you guys later.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and finish these out. One thing I did want to add on this, the Veterans Aid, we're talking about mental health and memory issues being the reason that you need medication management. One thing I would note is medication management is knowing like what to take when, but also like, have you ever taken the wrong pills? Is there medication that if you take it twice or you skip it once, there will be a big problem? Do you need someone else to go with you when you have medical appointments? That's a really big thing that I'd like to bring into the medication management issue, because it's one thing to take the pill, that you can set an alarm to take a pill once a day. But if you're meeting with your doctors, you've got serious health issues, you have trouble remembering what they say, you don't always know, you might miss things to bring up to them. And so you've got someone to accompany you to appointments. That I always want to make sure that the VA knows, because that's not just, you can't just set, there's not an app. I guess you could record the doctor's appointments. I don't think many would be crazy about that, but that's one thing to know. Medical management, including medical appointments, you need someone to remind you, etc. I think we're wrapping up on time. I just wanted to add that in. Again, remember, no, I like to fight the VA, so if you want to keep things more simple, take that all with a grain of salt. But thank you all for your questions. Sorry we couldn't get to everyone. We do this every Tuesday at 2 p.m. EST. I hope to see you all next week as well. Thank you.